Welcome to a very special habitat that I've been wanting to film and explain on site for a long time. Welcome to an estuary in Texas. Estuaries are where fresh water is coming into salt water. That's the very basic. Now you might be thinking, well, that's like a delta. Well, delta is a landform. Estuary really describes the ecosystem more so than the landform that's going to form as fresh water comes in. Of course, you're going to have something like a Mississippi River Delta or big landforms like that, but the ecosystem of an estuary is more than just the sediment laying on the bottom. So even right where I'm standing, I've got open water, but it's very shallow. It's also tidal. Estuaries are always tidal, so the water level will fluctuate with the tides. So will the salinity. So as there's more fresh water, let's say it rains up that way, and we got fresh water pushing in, it's more fresh. If there's high tide on the ocean side, then it's going to push salt water in. And this is all fluctuating up and down, stratification. There's salt water on the bottom, fresh water on top, and those are always changing. Sometimes it's saltier, sometimes it's fresher. Sometimes there's more current that mixes them up and messes up the stratification. There's all sorts of things that are happening in these estuaries. Because the water is mixed, salt and fresh, it's called brackish water. There's lots of stuff that can live in brackish water just straight up. Believe it or not, largemouth bass, that is a very common sport fish in the DFW area, it can live in fairly salty water. You can find bass in a lot of these estuaries, particularly if the water is stratified and there's fresh water on top and salt water on bottom. Then you can be catching bass on top and be catching crabs on the bottom. Use that as bait for a bull shark or a redfish. That's very common. These estuaries are incredibly diverse. For instance, just right where I'm standing, it's windy, but it's not as windy as it is out on the beach at Corpus. It's hot, but it's not that hot. The water's right here. There's a cool breeze coming off. There's plenty of humidity. There's lots of sunlight, but there's plenty of shade too. There is soil. There's also sand. There's also shell beaches like what I'm standing on right now. These are all shells. Oyster bars that are made out of oyster shells, kind of like this one. Lots and lots of little islands and breaks and peninsulas and things that break up the wave. So consequently, the wave action is not that severe. 365-day growing season. There's no ice that ever forms here. There's everything that these organisms could want. Just right here, right where I'm standing, there's everything from like coastal Bermuda grass to marsh grasses, salt marsh grasses back here. There looks like buttonbush, and there's a dozen different plants I can see just right down this row of grass right here. There's trees in the background. There's open shallow water. There's islands. There's clay soil. There's sand soil. There's broken shell beach. It's all right here, even just in the like 30-foot circle of where I'm standing. That's one of the problems with estuaries, is that the soil, the water, the sunlight, the temperature is inside the zone of tolerance for lots of stuff, including invasive exotic stuff. It's not like the chaparral or the deserts or the tundras where it's kind of specialized organisms only. No. Down here, everything's making a living. Estuaries are called a diversity hotspot. That's great, but also dangerous because this is a hotbed for invasive exotics. I brought you to this place too because estuaries face a number of very unique problems that are faced somewhat by the intertidal zone and some other areas, but you really start to see them in estuaries. Shoreline erosion. So look behind me here. You see all this shore is just falling off. You can see where people have put concrete and things to try to stop the shoreline erosion, and it's not happening. You see, look, even more over here. This riprap has been put up, and as you see, it has actually saved this little bit of bank right here. And as soon as the riprap stops, then boom, look at the shoreline. The shoreline is just being eaten away. And one of the reasons why is because they got rid of all the grasses and bushes and shrubs and everything that is supposed to be here, cut all that down. All that was stabilizing the bank. Mangrove trees and all the native vegetation that grows right here in these habitats stabilize the banks. And when you cut all that down to put Bermuda grass or St. Augustine grass for your RV park, then we've modified the habitat. This grass is not stabilizing the soil, and we start losing the shoreline. Exactly like right there. This is another issue that estuaries have. Feral animals. Feral cats are a problem here, just like they are in the big cities. just right here at the mouth of the estuary, we can see a whole bunch of chemical toilets, dumpsters, garbage, plastic waste, old tires, you name it. All comes from places like this. But it also comes from all these ranches. And even, you see the oil derrick in the background back there. It comes from the oil and gas industry. It comes from homes, it comes from neighborhoods, it comes from businesses, all up and down these estuaries. And remember, because this is where fresh water is coming in, so all the pollution and things that are up there in the freshwater watershed, is also coming into the estuary. On top of this, all this human activity around estuaries, because they're so comfortable, because the fishing's good, because the temperature's great, the soil's great, you can park out here. This is not sugar sand. I can get my RV right out here and have a good time. Estuaries are perfect for human habitat as well, but what goes along with that is a lot of pollution, invasive exotics, and feral animals.